Hi everyone, this is Dr. J. Tamizhkumaran from Dvara E-Dairy. I've been working in Dvara E-Dairy since 5 years. If you take dairy industry, see the dairy industry is one of the beautiful industries where the progression has been making wonders in the last 5 decades, I would say. See, for example, without technology, the dairy industry has not grown into different sectors. Before White Revolution, if you see, we were somewhere demanding for the milk powders from the other countries. But within a span of 5 decades, once the dairy revolution boomed, what happened was something unique. So right now, India is the first milk producing country in all of the globe. Not only in that, we are first in the bovine population, we are first in the buffalo population, and most of all, this population, the productivity and all these crossbreeding programs boomed into a different entity only because of technology intervention. So this technology was always a part of any industry booming into a unique entity. So dairy industry is not an exception, and in Dvara E-Dairy what we do is we bring veterinary science and the technology put together an interdisciplinary approach to help the dairy farmers improve their livelihoods. See, the one main important thing about the dairy is dairy income is a daily income. So dairy income is a daily income in the sense all 300 days, in the 365 days, if a cow is giving a calf, you can get milk out of it for 300 days. This is because of the crossbreeding technology. And what we try to do in Dvara E-Dairy is, we are a dairy accelerator. We try to improve the livelihood of a 2 to 3 herd size dairy farmer into a 20 to 30 herd size dairy entrepreneur. So this is possible on 2 aspects. One, you need to give them the financial inclusion. The second one is on the training aspect. So in Dvara E-Dairy, we give 3 important things. One is the lending, the second one is the insurance, and the third one is dairy management practices. And all these things is given digitally. So what we were thinking uniquely is, when a veterinarian goes to a field, he needs to see the cattle on how the cattle is, what is the health status, what is the body condition, whether the productivity can be improved or not. On all those aspects, a veterinarian can go directly by touch and feel. He needs to see the cattle and then only he needs to give an opinion. But what we do in our technology is, we have digitized the cattle. Starting from the identity, the muzzle identity, just like our fingerprints, muzzle identity, which is a unique for each and every bovine. We have given a special vision computing model where it can identify a cattle based on the muzzle imprinting, and with a single image and very few inputs, a farmer himself can know how well the cattle is maintained nutritionally. So the most problem is solved based on nutrition. So if you take any dairy farmer, he would say the 60% of the production cost goes for milk production only in feeding. So the feed and fodder management plays an important role in helping a farmer improve his productivity. So what we have done is, we have developed a Dvara Surabhi app. So this Dvara Surabhi app, you just take a single image, a back image of a cattle. This image will look into it like a veterinarian looks into a cattle directly. So this gives an overall picture of the body condition, and based on the cattle stage, it gives an instant indication. So the farmer can know whether he feeds the cattle in a normal way or in an abnormal way. Because you go to a field, a farmer will always think he feeds his cattle in a right way. So what happens in field usually is, when the farmer is going to get more amount of milk from the cow, he gives more amount of feed, which is a wrong approach actually. So what we need to do is, there is a maintenance feed, there is a productivity feed. So based on that, the farmer has to feed the cattle to maintain the productivity of the cattle to get good income. When income comes, the productivity increases, and when the productivity increases, automatically the livelihood increases. So this is what we do in Dvara E-Dairy. So if you ask me, the 2 important aspects, one is the dairy management practices on the 3 different aspects of the primary health, primary and preventive health care, the feed and fodder management, the breeding management. We give this as a dairy DigiDoctor advisory services to the farmer via WhatsApp, via digital app. Even in our Dvara Surabhi, there is a chatbot option where they can themselves check whether the milk is produced is effectively from that particular cattle's productivity or not. Say for example, they will be owning a cattle which can effectively give around 10 liters, but they will be feeding it subnormally, which will affect the productivity of the cattle, and it will be giving only 6 to 7 liters. So based on the Dvara Surabhi app and the chatbot option, they can get to know whether the cattle can have more of productivity, and if that can be achieved, automatically his income is going to improve. And the first aspect which I was saying is the financial inclusion, the lending. So we see, usually in case of lending, what we do is, lending is available in all parts of the villages and country, but what we uniquely bring to the table is the differentiation of the model. Say for example, any bank will see a cattle as a cattle, and then based on the cattle they give a fixed market value, and based on that value, if he is having 3 or 4 cattle, the loan amount is fixed. But in Dvara E-Dairy, we have a solution which is a Surabhi platform which has a unique assessment of the cattle, which will assess the cattle for its productivity, milk yield, and we even generate a cash flow statement. This cash flow statement will give an overall idea of that particular cattle's productivity for the next 1 year. So based on this 1 year, you can get month on month income of that particular cattle just by taking 360-degree angle photographs. So this is possible, and based on that we also give a SurabhiScore which will be in red, green and amber. Based on that, the health status of the cattle can also be assessed. So a banker or a lending institution will have an authenticated underwriting tool to assess the cattle in all this scientific way, where both veterinary science also and the artificial intelligence also combinedly gives a unique comprehensive score. So this is where Dvara E-Dairy brings a first of its kind Surabhi platform which will assess the cattle and estimate its value and productivity both for lending as well as insurance. So for example, in the insurance, if you take the adverse selection, that is very, very important in case of selecting a cattle for insurance. Just like you do a small blood test for human beings to take a health insurance, we just take a back image of the cattle and then reject the poor cattle at the first instance, which will almost cover the operational cost of the insurance companies, because instead of doing all the process and then finally coming to a conclusion that the cattle is not good enough, here you take a single image of the cattle, you get to know the particular cattle is poor, average or good. So this is what we do as an underwriting technology in both case of the lending institutions and the insurance. And for the farmer, this will be a eye opener on whether he is feeding the cattle in a good way or not. So this instant indication will give him a clarity on how well he is maintaining the cattle, how well he can maintain the cattle in the future if he is not maintaining the cattle, and what are the possible problems or challenges that cattle could get. Say for example, most of the pregnant cows will not be fed the proper maintenance ration. So what happens is, during the calving, the cattle will have calcium deficiency and it might go to a Downer syndrome. But when they take a photo in the Dvara Surabhi app, they can get to know that their cow is not fed properly during this particular pregnancy stage, because of which it might end up in a Downer. So this indication will help the farmer to feed, because we have a recommendation also which will follow up. So it is not stopping only with the instant recommendation. This instant recommendation will be followed up with our WhatsApp call, or they can contact us through a DigiDoctor service in the Dvara Surabhi app itself, where they get the recommendation on what to do next so that the cattle health is improved. So the one thing is, we digitize the cattle, and by digitizing the cattle we help the financial institutions and the farmer to improve both their managemental practices and for them to underwrite the cattle. So if you see what we do in Dvara E-Dairy, it will not only help in this aspect, but the second dimension of this is, by giving the financial inclusion, by identifying the right cattle, will help the financial institution to identify the right cattle which will be given loan. And for the farmer, he will be more enthusiastic in identifying that cattle and maintaining it. So we not only identify the cattle and give it to the financial institution, we support those farmers in the cattle management solution to maintain that cattle in the same good health for that particular period of time, so that he will pay that particular loan amount in a better way. Because this is a loop where you give financial inclusion, and when you stop, it doesn't help the farmer. Whereas when you give the financial inclusion and you give the cattle management solution, it helps the farmer to maintain that particular cattle in the same health for throughout that particular 1 or 2 years, where the milk yield is going to be increasing. The more the milk is going to produce, the more the cow is going to produce, it is going to repay the loan amount. And not only that, just like I said before, the dairy industry, where the white revolution changed the milk production and milk productivity in India, there is a difference between two things. One is the mass production, the other one is production by mass. In India, it is most of the second one, it is production by mass, where most of the farmers will have only 2 to 3 cattle, which is a small herd size, but slowly that part of entrepreneurship is changing into a dairypreneur. So here the dairypreneur, what he is trying to do is, he wants to become an entrepreneur on making dairy as a primary occupation. Say for example, previously agriculture was a sole income, and we used to proudly say that agriculture is the backbone of India, right? But dairy is slowly getting a shift here, mainly because of the GDP contribution. If you see, 30% of the agriculture produce and 5% of the GDP contribution is coming from dairy alone, which is a huge growth. So when you see every year, there is a growth in dairy sector as a primary occupation. So that's where Dvara E-Dairy wants each and every farmer who gets benefited from the financial inclusion to be our champion farmers or our dairy heroes in that local. We work in different clusters, say in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, and each and every cluster we are identifying minimum 20 to 25 the dairy champions who will be a lay leader or will be an influencer to help the other farmer to take this dairy path, because we have farmers who had 3 to 4 cows when they took loan, but now they have 30 cows, which is a huge improvement, which will be a role model or an aspiration for the fellow dairy farmers who not only depend on agriculture, but going forward, like I said before, it will be a mass production. So production by mass has to be converted into mass production, where one single farmer will have more cows, and more cows, more milk, and when more milk comes, more income, and more income will directly contribute to the livelihood. So this is not the future, this is right now happening in India, and right now we are seeing in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka in our own farmers, where they are changing from a small and marginal farmer to a large farmer. Through the financial inclusions and dairy management practices, we want this improvement of livelihood from the farmers in a scientific way. So instead of going to a veterinarian directly, they can use our dairy solutions like Dvara Surabhi and dairy app, where they get to know each and every point on how to manage a cattle, when to feed the cattle, and how to feed the cattle. So just an example, we have launched a new technology, which is do-it-yourself digital cattle insurance, where just like you avail a vehicle insurance, you can take a 360-degree photographs of your cattle, and then you can take cattle insurance on your own. If a farmer is a technology-savvy farmer, he can directly go, take the images, take the muzzle image. When you submit the button, automatically you get the cattle value, and based on the cattle value, you can pay online and then get the policy in your WhatsApp. So we have made the solutions which are user friendly, and which is something which is unimaginable, I would say, because right now farmer getting insurance on his own is something a new product and first of its kind of product in all of India. And not only that, we have launched a new product on 499, where they can avail this insurance for the EFers also, because most of the time the farmers, when they do business, they don't see this as a business, they see as a part of their life. So usually the farmers do agriculture as their primary occupation. Usually the agriculture byproduct is used as the feed for the cattle, and cattle byproduct is a manure for the agricultural land. But now the dairy industry is growing in such a way that it can be a primary occupation, because dairy income is a daily income, where they can get a lot of income out of dairy alone. So each and every cattle they own is an asset. Frankly, it is a moving asset, it's a moving ATM, I can say, because every farmer, when they do this particular cattle management solution, they should be thinking of two things. One is to insure the cattle. Why? Because they are not doing it as a part of their life, they are doing it as a part of their business. When they do it as a part of the business, every business has to be insured, and the moment they insure the cattle, their livelihood secured, and that's why we call our insurance product also as a livelihood insurance and not a cattle insurance.